Hello, hello everybody. I will be doing something different for a while. I have become fascinated by the emerald tablets of Thoth, and I would love, in fact, it's necessary to properly interpret their meanings. And that is the whole point of these videos. I will go tablet by tablet, first reading the passages and then giving my interpretations. I will start with stating the website that I'm using. It is called bibliotecapleiades.net. I will leave a link in the first comment. And I will also leave a link in the comments section to the website based on the work of this individual who translated. So here it goes. First, who this individual is. It is Dr. Duriel, however you pronounce it, who has a connection with the Great White Lodge. And that's highlighted in blue. It's a link to the website itself, which also works through the pyramid priesthood, was instructed to recover and return to the Great Pyramid these ancient tablets. So Dr. Dorial is the translator. This was accomplished, but before returning them, Dorial was given permission to translate and retain a copy of the wisdom engraved on the tablets. This was done in 1925, and now permission has been given for this translation by Dorial to be published solely through the Brotherhood of the White Temple. This is the only authorized, original, and true rendition of these emerald tablets. It is expected that many will scoff, yet the true student will read between the lines and gain wisdom. If the light is in you, the light which is engraved in the tablets will respond. So Dr. Dorial, the main website is the Great White Lodge. I'll leave this website's link and the Great White Lodge website link in the first comment. So this is sort of a preface now. He says, Thoth the Atlantean. When Thoth the Atlantean master raised the people of Kem, parentheses Egypt, to a great civilization, and when the time came for him to leave Egypt, he erected the Great Pyramid over the entrance of the great halls of Amenti. In the pyramid, he posited his records and appointed guards for his secrets from among the highest of his people. In later times, the descendants of these guards became the pyramid priests, while Thoth was deified as the god of wisdom, the recorder, by those in the age of darkness which followed his passing. In legend, the halls of Amenti became the underworld, the halls of the gods, where the soul passed after death for judgment. During later ages, the ego of Thoth passed into the bodies of many in the manner described in the Emerald Tablets, a book of record, and occult wisdom, which he wrote and left in the pyramid for those of a future age of light. The tablets. His writings consist of 12 tablets of emerald green formed from a substance created through alchemical transmutation. They are imperishable, resistant to all elements, corrosion, and acids. In effect, the atomic and cellular structure is fixed, and no change can take place, thus violating the material law of ionization. Upon them are engraved characters in the ancient Atlantean language, characters which respond to the attuned thought waves of the reader and which release much more wisdom and information than the characters do when merely deciphered. The tablets are fastened together with hoops of a golden colored alloy suspended from a rod of the same material. Dr. Dorial has translated this work and has published through the Brotherhood of the White Temple a translation of 10 of these 12 tablets. He has divided the 10 into 13 parts for the sake of convenience. The last 2 tablets are found in the interpretation of the Emerald Tablets, also by Dr. Dorial. So I suppose when all this is said and done, I should find his interpretation and compare it to the interpretation that I will make starting now. In the Emerald Tablets are found secrets which will prove of inestimate value to the serious student. Are you the serious student? Are you? Are you? I know I am. Where was I? The following is an excerpt taken from his work. A long time ago, I, in my childhood, lay 'neath the stars on long-buried Atlantis, dreaming of mysteries far above men. Then in my heart grew there a great longing to conquer the pathway that led to the stars. In other words, combining the physical with the metaphysical. The consciousness as it is now, but able to travel freely like it had no body. But the body's still there. That's how I see that part. Year after year I sought after wisdom, seeking new knowledge. I'm doing that too. That's what I hope we all are doing. Following the way until at last my soul, in great travail, broke from its bondage of earthman. Free from the body, I flashed through the night. Unlocked at last for me was the star space. Free was I from the bondage of night. Now to the end of space sought I wisdom, far beyond knowledge of finite man. So in other words, his search for knowledge to turn into wisdom eventually helped him break from the bondage of earthman. He did not say bondage of body, he said bondage of earthman. So in other words, he transcended earthman. He became the macrocosm for the microcosm. He became what hopefully we will become. Those of us ready to lift the veil 100% and see the truth exactly for what it is, everywhere we go, in everything that we do, and simply decide to live a life based on the truth rather than the lie. And when the truth dominates, watch how our world changes to the love frequency. Translation and interpretation by Dorial. Originally published in mimeographed form in the 1930s by a mysterious Dr. Dorial, these writings quickly became an underground sensation among esotericists of the time. No one has ever seen the original tablets mentioned here, and in all likelihood these writings would be considered channel material today. However, the Emerald Tablets of Thoth the Atlantean are still part of the modern corpus hermeticum, for they elaborate and deepen the meaning of the historical Emerald Tablet and writings of Thoth Hermes. That was not a preface, that was an introduction to what this will be about. This is the preface. This is the preface. Wow, already 10 minutes in. Okay. In the following pages, I will reveal some of the mysteries which as yet have only been touched upon lightly either by myself or other teachers or students of truth. Man's search for understanding of the laws which will regulate his life has been unending, yet always just beyond the veil which shields the higher planes from material man's vision, the truth has existed, ready to be assimilated by those who enlarge their vision by turning inward, not outward, in their search. Inward. Inward. All the chakras. Inward. All symbols are but keys. Wait. In the silence of material senses lies the key to the unveiling of wisdom. He who talks does not know. He who knows does not talk. The highest knowledge is unutterable, for it exists as an entity in lanes which transcend all material words or symbols. Well, here's the thing, and I want to make this clear at this very point in time. This reality should be based on free will. We decide ourselves, for ourselves, what affects ourselves. Okay? Free will. So when it says, he who talks does not know, he who knows does not talk, I'm not acknowledging that. It does not resonate as truth. Because my free will dictates that humanity was on the brink of either ascension as a whole, meaning this physical reality becomes a greater version of itself based on universal law, natural law, truth, cymatics, vortex geometry, fractal geometry, sacred geometry, everything that reflects truth. Okay? If it feels true in my heart to share all that I discovered, because this is not just about me, it's about all of us. All symbols are but keys to doors leading to truths, and many times the door is not open because the key seems so great that the things which are beyond it are not visible. Obviously, if everything starts as mentalism, it's the thought process. Not all thought turns into physical reality. If we can understand that all keys, all material symbolisms are manifestations, are but extensions of a great law and truth, we will begin to develop the vision which will enable us to penetrate beyond the veil. It's kind of like saying, don't think of Christ the individual. Think of Christ consciousness, which embodies what the individual should be like, which is the pineal gland, which is also the link to the etheric world. How do we know this? Because it's the only place DMT is produced. All things in all universes, more than one, move according to law, and the law which regulates the movement of the planets is no more immutable than the law which regulates the material expressions of man, which is going back to all the maths to discover universal truth. Because universal truth is based on math. There's no doubt about that. When sound makes a cymatics pattern, that's all math. The great search for... One of the greatest of all cosmic laws is that which is responsible for the formation of man as a material being. The great aim of the mystery schools of all ages has been to reveal the workings of the law which connect man the material and man the spiritual. The connecting link between the material man and the spiritual man is the intellectual man, for the mind partakes of both the material and immaterial qualities. The aspirant for higher knowledge must develop the intellectual side of his nature and so strengthen his will that is able to concentrate all powers of his being on and in the plane he desires. I desire higher consciousness right now, to find more truths than this society that we live in is preparing to give me. But essentially, he's saying connecting link between the material man and the spiritual man is the intellectual man. Well, the intellectual man is your consciousness. The spiritual is self-explanatory, the ether, the astral world, the light that fills the physical. And the material is all that is physical reality, which is mostly water. Unite the two properly, and you develop a great consciousness. Self-conscious consciousness. The great search for light, life and love only begins on the material plane. That's why we're doing this. That's why I'm doing this. Carried to its ultimate, its final goal is complete oneness with the universal consciousness, truth. And it's all based on free will. But there are laws, mathematical laws, which are expressed as frequencies. The foundation in the material is the first step, then comes the higher goal of spiritual attainment. I am very spiritual, but I still have a long way to go. In the following pages, I will give an interpretation of the Emerald Tablets and their secret, hidden, and esoteric meanings. Concealed in the words of Thoth are many meanings that do not appear on the surface. Light of knowledge brought to bear upon the tablets will open many new fields for thought. And then parentheses, read and be wise, close parentheses. But only if the light of your own consciousness awakens the deep-seated understanding which is an inherent quality of the soul. Be the light of your own consciousness. Literally, be the light of your own consciousness. Be the light of your own consciousness. What I mean by that is, do not use any external sources to power you. Use you to power you. Alright, so that was the preface. Now to the first tablet. I suppose I should cut this off here and go to tablet 1, but if I do that, no one's going to watch this. And this I feel is important. So here goes. Tablet 1. I, Thoth, the Atlantean, master of mysteries, keeper of records, mighty king, magician, living from generation to generation, being about to pass into the halls of Amenti, set down for the guidance of those that are to come after, these records of the mighty wisdom of great Atlantis. So Thoth considers himself an Atlantean, a master of mysteries, which means he's figured out a lot of things that no one else has. Keeper of records, he's a librarian. A mighty king, that means he rules over people, perhaps. Magician, obviously if he's dealing with alchemy, a subject few understand, it will appear like magic to those that do not understand the science, right? Because alchemy is the predecessor to modern science. Living from generation to generation. That means he's immortal. He doesn't die like us. Being about to pass into the halls of Amenti. So he's saying he's about to go into that Amenti place, which is beneath the Great Pyramid, which was listed in the home page where it talks about Dr. Dorville's translation. So it says about Thoth the Atlantean. When Thoth the Atlantean raised the people of Chem, or Egypt, to a great civilization, and when time came for him to leave Egypt, he erected the Great Pyramid over the entrance of the great halls of Amenti. So in other words, it's where the Great Pyramid is at. So when he says he's about to pass into the halls of Amenti, it means he's going inside. Now, he's not saying he's about to die. He's not saying he's going anywhere. So what the heck is this Amenti place, right? So his wisdom is an Amenti. But it doesn't say that he changed in any way. So we don't know exactly what he meant by going there. We just know his wisdom is there. In the great city of Kir, on the island of Undal, in a time far past, I began this incarnation. Not as the little men of the present age did. The mighty ones of Atlantis live and die, but rather from aeon to aeon did they renew their life in the halls of Amenti, where the river of life flows eternally onward. So he says he lived in the great city of Kurt on the island of Vunda. I don't know what those are. In a time far past, where he began this incarnation. So the last version of his physical self. So like right now I'm 32. This is my last incarnation. If I happen to do what he does, I may live centuries, thousands of years, who knows. But he clearly states this happened in a time far past, very long ago. Because then he says, not as the little men of the present age did, the mighty ones of Atlantis live and die. So in other words, the people of Atlantis had a lifespan. He says he was born in a time before this lifespan era of Atlantis. Not only that, he calls them little men. If little men of Atlantis are our size, does that mean he's a big man? A giant? But rather, he continues, but rather from aeon to aeon did they renew their life in the halls of Amenti, where the river of life flows eternally onward. So the people that he incarnated in his last version in, the people he associated with, were eternal because they renewed their lives in the halls of Amenti. But then so the halls of Amenti, as we know it now, is supposed to be under the Great Pyramid of Egypt, right? But here he says the people he lived with had this process of going to the halls of Amenti, but it was on the island of Undal in the great city of Kir. So that's not necessarily in Egypt, is it? 100 times 10 have I descended the dark way that led into light. And as many times have I ascended from the darkness into the light, my strength and power renew. This is simple. 100 times 10 have I descended the dark way that led into light. 100 times 10, so 1,000 times he died and was reborn. That's how I see it. and as many times have I ascended from the darkness into the light. Yeah, so literally the cycle of birth, death, and rebirth, reincarnation cycle. The one that I feel we should all be getting out of. Now for a time I descend, and the men of Chem is ancient Egypt, shall know me no more. So then, he's saying he's about to die, or rather lose the physical form. And the people where he lived in Egypt, this Chem place, just won't see him no more. I guess he was such a present figure in daily life that to not have him anymore is kind of like not having the sun in the sky anymore. But in a time yet unborn will I rise again, mighty and potent, requiring an accounting of those left behind me. So in essence, he entrusted those he left behind with his wisdom, and says pretty much, use this wisdom wisely or there will be consequences when I return. Then beware, O men of Chem, if you have falsely betrayed my teaching, for I shall cast ye down from your high estate into the darkness of the caves from whence ye came. That's literally what he just said, what I just said. Betray not my secrets to the men of the north or the men of the south, lest my curse fall upon ye. I feel that this section which says don't share this knowledge is only relevant to the time when he died, because there must have been some certain world dynamics going on at the time where he must have felt those to the north and those to the south should not have this knowledge. Does that mean it applies today anymore? No. Because the knowledge was gained. It was gained by those that were not supposed to gain it. Okay? And we, the ones reading things such as this and trying to gain wisdom out of it, are the ones that are trying to free ourselves from the men of the north and the south that have virtually made slaves of us somehow. They are the ones that rule the world today, the 1% of psychopaths. Remember and heed my words, for surely will I return again and require of thee that which ye guard. I, even from beyond time and from beyond death will I return, rewarding or punishing as ye have requited your truest. Rewarding or punishing. This is very similar to me too. What everyone is waiting for that is a Christian. For Christ to come back, right? Salvation through Christ. It sounds literally like the same thing. But here's the thing. I have come to realize the only aspect of Christ that is returning is Christ consciousness. I'll have to do a separate video about that again. But Christ consciousness is the only embodiment of Christ. Okay? And Christ consciousness is also known as Krishna consciousness. So it's not universal. It's not tied to one religion. It's universal. And I believe this is what Thoth means here. It's going to be him, the Thoth, returning. The Thoth. The consciousness. The Thoth consciousness, like Christ consciousness. In other words, 100% DNA activation by a select few, I'm hoping to be one of them, that will take it upon themselves to teach the rest of humanity how to attain that same level of DNA awakening, and in the process, figure out a way how to eliminate the forces that are suppressing humanity. Will that require the total annihilation of them, these forces? It's hard to say. Maybe a compromise can be reached, to be seen. Great were my people in the ancient days, great beyond the conception of the little people now around me, knowing the wisdom of old, seeking far within the heart of infinity, knowledge that belonged to earth's youth. So he's saying he lived among the true ancients, and he lived among the Atlanteans, and he has knowledge from both places. And he's pretty much saying that the people of Atlantis are seeking the knowledge of the ancients. And I find that really funny because we today are seeking the knowledge of the Atlanteans. I find it interesting how he says, the seeking far within the heart of infinity, knowledge that belonged to Earth's youth. What is the heart of infinity? The center. But he says Earth, so it has to be Earth center or magnetic north. Wise were we with the wisdom of the children of light who dwelt among us. Strong were we with the power drawn from the eternal fire. So wait a minute. They were wise with the wisdom of the children of the light who dwelt among them. Dwelt among them? Lived among them? Children of the light? Well, what is children of the light? The sun. So they came from the sun? Children of the sun? I don't know. But it definitely means they came from, not from Earth. E.T., right? E.T. Strong were we with the power drawn from the eternal fire. Does that imply the sun? Well, the sun is supposed to be electric, isn't it? Or wait, no, magnetic. The sun is magnetic. So then, is that the eternal fire? And of all these, greatest among the children of men was my father, Thothme, Thotme, keeper of the great temple, link between the children of light who dwelt within the temple and the races of men who inhabited the 10 islands. I see. I understand. So, his father was the link between the children of the light, which I understand now, is simply the etheric form. Our etheric selves. Remove the body, what is left is the children of the light. That's what it is. So he was the keeper of the great temple, link between the children of light who dwelt within the temple. Okay, so this temple is the only place these beings existed. And then there was the races of men who inhabited the 10 islands. The 10 islands. I wonder what they're called. So in other words, his father, in his great temple, communicated with the etheric and the physical and combined them as one. Interesting. 2 different dimensions, I suppose. Mouthpiece, actually maybe more than 2 dimensions, because we don't know how many dimensions are in ether form, right? Mouthpiece after the 3 of the dweller of Unal, speaking to the kings with the voice that must be obeyed. Mouthpiece after the 3, I don't know. Dweller of Unal, okay, he lived in Unal, that place Thoth talked about. The voice that must be obeyed. Again, if everything is about free will, why is there a voice that must be obeyed? Hmm? This is where I have issues with the tablets. Grew I there from a child into manhood, being taught by my father the elder mysteries, until in time there grew within the fire of wisdom, until it burst into a consuming flame. So in essence, and this I've noticed this happening to me too, the more knowledge you gain, the more you turn it into wisdom. The more wisdom you possess, the more wisdom you want to accumulate. The more wisdom you accumulate, the more DNA you awaken. The more DNA you awaken, the more you transcend the bondage of slavery. Not desired I, but the attainment of wisdom. Until on a great day the command came from the dweller of the temple that I be brought before him. That must be his father, right? Few there were among the children of men who had looked upon that mighty face and lived. For not as the sons of men are the children of light when they are not incarnate in a physical body. Okay, so it was not his father. The dweller of the temple must be someone of great importance. Oh, because it says mouthpiece. Mouthpiece after the tree of the dweller of Unal, speaking to the kings with the voice that must be obeyed. Speaking to the kings like he's God. Maybe he is God. What is God? He's not from here. He's the children of the light. He's not from here. Okay, so Thoth was brought before this being of light who had a very high status. Few among the children of men had looked upon that mighty face and lived, so most died. For not as the sons of men are the children of light when they are not incarnate in a physical body. Maybe it's the sun. Maybe it is the sun. It just might be the sun. Because if it's not in the shape of a body, it's more in the shape of an atom. And an atom, I now know, it's in the shape of a torus field. While the sun is the center of a larger torus field. Or at least that's what it's trying to represent, because I'm not so sure the sun is what we think it is. But that's interesting. Okay, so it's a very powerful light being. Chosen was I from the sons of men, taught by the dweller so that his purposes might be fulfilled, purposes yet unborn in the womb of time. So Thoth, a son of men, was taught by the dweller, a being of light, so that his purpose might be fulfilled, purposes yet unborn in the womb of time. So, in essence, Thoth was chosen for kind of like Moses, literally like Moses. Okay, this is gonna be how it's gonna be from now on, because this is what the dweller or the slight being wants done. Interesting. Long ago I dwelt in the temple, learning ever and yet ever more wisdom, until I too approached the light emitted from the great fire. I don't understand what he means by light emitted from the great fire yet. Oh wait, I do not. Okay, so the next part says, taught me he the path to Amenti, the underworld where the great king sits upon his throne of might. So the dweller, which is a being of light, taught him the path to Amenti, the underworld, where the great king sits upon his throne of might. Okay, so I think what that means is Amenti is supposed to be a spiritual place, even though it's represented as being beneath the Great Pyramid of Egypt, but also existed on that one island. Well then, I suppose if you just step into that place and you're not prepared to be there, you're stuck to the material plane. But once your wisdom has grown far enough, you're able to be there in the etheric plane. So it's in a sense a not a wormhole, a portal. It's literally a portal. That space is a portal. Okay. So the halls of Amenti is after you cross the portal into the other dimension, the etheric dimension. Gotcha. So he was taught how to get there. But he says here, the underworld where the great king sits upon his throne of might. But wait a minute, the underworld is associated with being beneath the ground, a lower dimension. Sounds like the solar plexus chakra, right? That's not progression upwards, that's progression downwards. That's de-evolution. Deep I bowed in homage before the lords of life and the lords of death, receiving as my gift the key of life. Deep I bowed in homage before the lords of life and death, receiving the key of life. So in other words, he became their enforcer. He says, I bowed in homage. Bowed in homage. Yeah, he literally became their servant, if you will, to attain the key of immortality. That's what it sounds like to me. Free was I of the halls of Amenti, bound not be deaf to the circle of life. Far to the stars I journeyed until space and time became as naught. In other words, he attained a high level of etheric form. He became, if we are stuck in the third and fourth dimensions, which should really combine to be the fifth dimension, he was at least eighth dimensional or higher. That's what I think he meant. And because he's able to freely travel through space as consciousness, as thought, he really did not die. He removed all physical reality bondages. Interesting. And he went to the stars, he journeyed far until space and time no longer existed. Space and time is associated with Saturn, which means he went out of Saturn's influence. And it stated that in the past, Saturn was the sun. So to escape Saturn's gravity, he was way out of the solar system. Then having drunk deep of the cup of wisdom, I looked into the hearts of men, and there found I greater mysteries, and was glad. For only in the search for truth could my soul be stilled, and the flame within be quenched. I see. I looked into the hearts of men, and there found I greater mysteries, and was glad. Okay. The consciousness that is Thoth, which had all physical bondages removed, returned into the very consciousness of men. Christ consciousness. He became the idea itself. So in essence, every time someone thinks like him, becomes like him, he's alive again. Wow. That's some deep shit right there. Down through the ages I lived, seeing those around me taste of the cup of death and return again in the light of life. The cycle of birth and rebirth, pretty much. Gradually from the kingdoms of Atlantis passed waves of consciousness that had been one with me. Aha, there you go. Just what I said about being part of many men. Only to be replaced by spawn of a lower star. Aha! Thoth became the sun. Thoth became the sun, and being a living being as the sun, he emits light, which is, as I've learned recently by how I got tanned, it is penetrating the body because light is frequencies, right? And we are frequencies. So and the crown chakra is the perfect receiver. So we've been receiving the sun's rays of light, which is a conscious being, living being, which has an agenda of how we should think. So therefore, we're living based on the principles of the sun. So what he's saying here is, in obedience to... Oh wait. Gradually from the kingdoms of Atlantis passed waves of consciousness that had been one with me. So a lot of people died, only to be replaced by spawn of a lower star. Spawn of a lower star. Spawn is children. So people died, people were replaced, but the people that were replaced with the frequencies of thought from a different place, not that of Thoth, the invader sun. So is the sun in the sky Thoth or the invader sun? It might be the invader sun. Interesting. So which sun is Thoth then? Very interesting. In obedience to the law, the word of the master grew into flower. Downward into the darkness turned the thoughts of the Atlanteans. Until at last in this wrath rose from his Agwanti, the dweller. This word has no English equivalent. It means a state of detachment. Speaking the word, calling the power. So in obedience to the law, the word of the master grew into flower. So thought produced word. Word was interpreted by thought. Thought blossomed into a flower. Downward into the darkness turned the thoughts of the Atlanteans. Downwards into the darkness. So that means they became bad. Until at last in this wrath arose from his Agwanti, the dweller, the state of detachment, speaking the word, calling the power. So in essence, okay, so the dweller used to be in the great temple, which was watched over by Thoth Me, the father of Thoth. So he came out of that place. Wow, he came out of that place. until at last in this wrath arose. So the Atlanteans were being really bad, drawn by the darkness, and then the dweller, which was in the great temple, came out of the temple. Probably being wrathful. Let's see. Deep in earth's heart, the sons of Amenti heard, and hearing, directing the changing of the flower of fire that burns eternally, changing and shifting using the logos until that great fire changed its direction. So the sons of Amenti live in the earth's heart, the center of the earth, right? So they heard, directed, and changed the flower of fire that burns eternally. Changing and shifting using the logos until that great fire changed its direction. Let me continue. Maybe I'll understand better. Over the world then broke the great waters, drowning and sinking, changing earth's balance until only the temple of light was left, standing on the great mountain on Undal, still rising out of the water. Some there were who were living, safe from the rush of the fountains. I believe this Undal place is the center of the earth, what I consider magnetic north, Mount Meru. That's what I believe. So there's a halls of Amenti, Mount Meru, and there's a halls of Amenti, the chamber underneath the pyramid of Egypt. So the temple of light was on Mount Meru, and because the Atlanteans were being bad, they changed. No, this dweller, which is like a sun, escaped from the temple because Mount Meru was pretty much destroyed, and then it started to wander, which caused the great waters. And if we recall back to 12,000 years ago, there was the major cataclysm that raised sea levels by 400 feet in some places, and they dropped 400 feet in some places. But the main idea is that there was a massive ice sheet on North America, covering most of North America, that melted rapidly. So if there was a great consciousness of light in a temple, magnetic center, Mount Meru, that escaped, and perhaps that is the sun, that is because of whatever the Atlanteans were doing with frequencies, perhaps that's what destroyed Mount Meru, and that's what caused all that ice to melt so quickly, and the shift in the Earth's rotation. Interesting. Called to me then the Master, saying, Gather ye together my people, take them by the arts ye have learned afar across the waters, until ye reach the land of the hairy barbarians, dwelling in caves of the desert. Follow there the plan that yet know of. So his master told him to go away to a land across the waters, where live hairy barbarians, Neanderthals, dwelling in caves of the desert. Neanderthals in South America, perhaps? South Africa? Or was Europe a desert back then? In fact, I'm curious. Was Europe ever a desert? I need to research that. So he went there to teach these people something that he doesn't know he's supposed to teach them yet. Gathered I then my people and entered the great ship of the Master. Upward we rose into the morning. Come on. That's a spaceship. That is a spaceship. He literally says, gathered I then my people and entered the gray ship of the master. Upward we rose. How else are you going to rise upwards if you're not flying? If you're flying, you're a spaceship. Dark beneath us lay the temple. Suddenly over it rose the waters. So he looked down and he saw the temple being the ocean water coming up pretty much. Vanished from earth until time appointed was the great temple. So then, the center of the earth, magnetic north, or the hole in the ground that leads to hollow earth, as some say. There is a temple there. Man, it's magnetic north. I know it has to be. It has to be. First, we fled towards the sun of the morning, until beneath us lay the land of the children of Chem. Raging, they came with cudgels and spears, lifting in anger, seeking to slay and utterly destroy the sons of Atlantis. So pretty much he's talking about when they left Atlantis to the time they arrived in Chem, which is Egypt. But when they arrived, the people living there who had cudgels and spears were angry at the sons of Atlantis and tried to kill them. Then he says, then raised I my staff and directed a ray of vibration frequencies, striking them still in their tracks as fragments of stone of the mountain. So he's saying his frequency technology was able to turn people into stone. So you gotta wonder, are all these statues or are they people that got, what's the term, petrified or whatever you want to call it? It would also explain why the technology used to build pyramids or ancient temples is so different, because the older the structures, the better they are built, the more monoliths. So if he has the most advanced knowledge, the ray of vibration coming from his staff, he might be able to create monoliths. And that technology was lost, but now it's being regained by people like you and I. Then spoke I to them in words calm and peaceful, telling them of the might of Atlantis, saying we were children of the sun and its messengers. Cowed I them by my display of magic science, until at my feet they groveled when I released them. So he spoke to them while they were turned to stone of the mountain, in a very calm and peaceful way, telling them of the might of Atlantis, telling them they were children of the sun and its messengers. And they were so impressed by his magic science that at his feet they groveled when he turned them back into regular humans, no longer stone. Wow. Just wow. That's insane. Not only was he able to turn them to stone, but he was able to turn them back into humans. Wow. And he told them they are children of the sun. Interesting. So then they are not children of the earth. If they are children of the sun, they are not of the earth. It's as simple as that. Thoth, or at least the children of the sun, are not of the earth. Interesting. Long dwelt we in the land of Chem, long and yet long again, until obeying the commands of the Master, who while sleeping yet lives eternally, I sent from me the sons of Atlantis, sent them in many directions. that from the womb of time, wisdom might rise again in her children. This part is easy. Many videos on the Bodhi Mantra channel collaborate this. But you will see across the world a lot of people with red hair and blue or green eyes that became leading figures for the religions that follow. Everywhere. Everywhere in the world. This is the work of Thoth. Interesting. I believe in these times the pyramids were built. These people taught the secrets of the pyramids, or pyramid-like structures. Direct connections to Thoth. Blessed I then a path to Amenti, so that I might retain my powers, living from age to age, a son of Atlantis, keeping the wisdom, preserving the records. So he went back into Amenti, this time in Egypt, under the Great Pyramid, in the world beyond physical reality, the ether, to retain his powers. It's funny how he refers to himself as a sun, S-U-N, like a sun in the sky. Great few the sons of Chem, conquering the people around them, grown slowly upwards in soul force. Conquering the people around them? Is this only physical or metaphysical? Because if it's physical, maybe there is a Jesuit and a Jew, Talmudic Jew connection there. I don't know. Now for a time I go from among them into the dark halls of Amenti, deep in the halls of the earth, before the lords of the powers, face to face once again with the dweller. Before the lords of the powers, deep in the halls of the earth, the dark halls of Amenti. So if there's an Amentian magnetic center, and there's an Amenti beneath the pyramid of the Great Pyramid of Egypt, they are just portals. Those locations are portals into this other etheric plane. Without a doubt. They're just portals. And once he gets to the other side, he would interact with the dweller. But I thought the dweller escaped from the Great Temple when the Atlanteans were messing with frequencies. Raise thy high over the entrance, a doorway, a gateway leading down to Amenti. Aha, gotcha. So in the past, Amenti literally was beneath those places, but in time, he raised a doorway, a gateway, a portal. And there's probably more than one portal. Few there would be with courage to dare it, few past the portal to dark Amenti. Raised over the passage I a mighty pyramid, using the power that overcomes earth force gravity. Deep and yet deeper place I a force house or chamber, from it carved I a circular passage reaching almost to the great sun. Okay, so one entrance is beneath the Great Pyramid, and the other entrance is a magnetic center where he came from in this last incarnation, where the people there eternally lived, because they renew themselves in the halls of Amenti. So the Polarians were able to freely travel between the physical plane and the etheric plane. Return to source and return back here. Interesting. So Thoth is telling us we can go there, but it's almost impossible because of the passage, the doorway, the portal that was placed, so that only those with like maybe a pure soul could actually get there. Few with courage, would dare to go there. I have the courage. I'm going to Magnetic North. When? I was hoping this year. I'm not sure anymore. There in the apex set I the crystal, sending the ray into the time-space, drawing the force from out of the ether, concentrating upon the gateway to Amenti. Okay, so he set a crystal into the sending the ray into the time-space. Again, that goes back to Saturn and Cronus. Drawing the force from out of the ether, concentrating upon the gateway to Amenti. You know what? Sounds to me like the sun became a receiver for the transmitted frequencies from Saturn, which relate to the gateway to Amenti, which we don't really have access to, which is why we're imprisoned here. It's hard to say whether Thoth was good or bad at this point, but it definitely sounds like the tools, the things he did, are being used against humanity today. Other chambers I built and left vacant to all seeming, yet hidden within them are the keys to Amenti. He who encouraged would dare the dark realms, let him be purified first by long fasting. Okay, so if my heart is telling me there's a connection with the ether at magnetic north, then there is a connection with the ether at magnetic north. If it feels so true in my heart, it has to be true. He says he built other chambers. If I feel there's a chamber there, there's a chamber there. I must go there. Lie in the sarcophagus of stone in my chamber. Then reveal I to him the great mysteries. Soon shall he follow to where I shall meet him. Even in the darkness of earth shall I meet him. I, Thoth, Lord of Wisdom, meet him and hold him and dwell with him always. It sounds like he is a sun. He really sounds like a sun. A sun in the sky, but which sun in the sky? Or perhaps the sun in the inner earth? Perhaps he is earth? Her consciousness? Builded I the great pyramid patterned after the pyramid of earth force, burning eternally so that it too might remain through the ages. The great pyramid burning eternally. Why is it burning eternally? Oh, this must have been when they had frequency technology, because the great pyramid worked with frequencies. It generated frequencies. But it doesn't really do that anymore, does it? But it's still there. And we don't know what's happening in the ether form. Perhaps something still is happening in the ether form. Because just the shape, the sacred mathematics, sacred geometry of the pyramid shape is supposed to generate power, even if we cannot see it. Based on that principle, I have a pyramid. I have a pyramid in my room made of copper that is generating energy based on the same principle. So who knows, maybe he's right, maybe it is burning eternally. In it I builded my knowledge of magic science, so that I might be here when again I return from Amenti. While I sleep in the holds of Amenti, my soul roaming free will incarnate, dwell among men in this form or another. So again, maybe it's just a state of consciousness like Christ consciousness that he's talking about, the thought form itself. Emissary on earth am I of the dweller, fulfilling his commands so many might be lifted. Emissary on earth am I of the dweller. Well, the dweller is the son that escaped the great hole that caused havoc on earth, and he's the emissary of that guy? That's not a good guy. This dweller is not a good guy. Fulfilling his commands so many might be lifted. Okay, so many might be lifted. You fulfill his commands? What are your commands? Now return I to the halls of Amenti, leaving behind me some of my wisdom. Preserve ye and keep ye the command of the dweller. Lift ever upwards your eyes towards the light. So he returned to the halls of Amenti, the Ether. He left behind some of his wisdom. Preserve ye and keep the command of the dweller. Lift ever upwards your eyes toward the light. Come on. That's the sun. He's saying, pay attention to the sun and absorb the frequencies coming from the sun. It sounds like this is how we are being controlled today, through the sun. Thoth is saying it himself. Surely in time ye are one with the Master. Surely be right, ye are one with the Master. Surely be right, yet are one with the All. Oh yeah, everything comes from a source, but that doesn't mean that the source is your master, unless your master is somehow feeding off of us. Now I depart from ye, know my commandments, keep them and be them, and I will be with you, helping and guiding you into the light. I'm not so sure I want to go into the light of your master. Now before me opens the portal, go I down in the darkness of night. So he went into the ether. And that's the end of this tablet. So it sounds to me like just like Christ, just like pretty much all religions, Thoth can be interpreted as good or bad. More so, while he had a form of incarnation at some point, he broke the bondage of men later on, and is simply just the ether form now. If he's just the ether form, he's the thought process, the state of mind, like Christ consciousness. It's pretty much the same thing. It's literally the same thing. But then he says he serves the master's will, free will, serving other will, which is the dweller, which is most likely the sun in the sky, which is most likely feeding off of us and keeping us under control with the very thought process it presents every day. We are exposed to the sun. More so, it's funny I have my coffee cup here. See the pyramid in Vegas? See the light at the very top? That's not a transmitter. That's a receiver. The pyramid tops are the receivers. So then, the way our corporate world is structured today is so that at the very top is the receivers for the dweller's will. They are the ones that truly get to interact with the dweller through their ceremonies, because the dweller comes from beneath earth. Oh my goodness. So tablet 1 is pretty much telling us how our world became enslaved.